This is an introduction to using applying textures to meshes in Gmax, and I'm going to start off by just drawing a quick box. So I'm up here in the top left. I'm going to take this very slowly. So there we are. That's our box, and what I'm going to do is apply a single texture. Here it is over here, Gmax Material Navigator. There's my texture. It's called Ballast, and it's actually made up of two different maps. That is the Ballast texture map itself, and then we have the opacity map, which allows for the edge of the ballast to become transparent. But we don't need to see both of those, so I'm going to close down maps, and the way I'm going to apply it, I've got this selected, so now I'm going to apply the ballast texture to the square, the box. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it look like a piece of track, even though it's massively too big. So let's just have a look at that ballast texture, and that's it there. That's it in there, and it's a TGA file. Here it is, Ballast 2. This is all my files for creating procedural track, ball gauge track, and there it is, Ballast 2. Okay, so it's a TGA file, which means that both of the dimensions, the length and the height, are powers of 2, not multiples of 2, powers of 2. In other words, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, and so on. You must have that, otherwise it won't appear properly in Trainz. So that's the texture that we're using, well, I'm using. Okay, and there it is there. And if I just go back to Ballast, you'll see there's the texture is there, and this is the opacity. And if I just double click on that, I'll click on that, you'll see that's what it looks like. So it's basically masking out the very edges of the ballast, and you can see that being masked out there. And this has just been applied to the box without any consideration whatsoever. So we don't need those. Let's keep this window, this particular view open. And of course, what's happening there is that although it's applied the texture, it doesn't, I only want to use a part of the texture. So my next step is to make sure I've got texture correction on, and you can actually see there where the opacity is allowing you to look through the box to the grid the other side. So what we want here is the top of the rail here, and we want the side of the rail here, and at the ends we just want a sort of blank colour. And if we are going to have the underneath of the rail showing, then we want to deal with that. So the first thing I tend to do is I choose an overall colour which will or texture rather, that will fill in everything, just a single uniform texture from within the overall ballast texture. So I'm going to go up to amend or modify, and here's our box, and this is the key button, unwrap UVW. Now you'll notice it's got a plus sign there, and that's really important because if you click on the plus sign, you'll see it gives you the option of selecting a face. And in Trainz, all meshes, or in Gmax rather, all meshes have faces. You've got to have at least one face. That would be a flat plane. Let's have a look at a flat plane. There's a plane, P-L-A-N-E, and if we draw that and then we rotate around, it shows it as nothing there, and it's got 0 thickness. So instead of having 6 faces, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then top and bottom 5 and 6 of our box, it's only got one face. And planes are very useful because you can use them to overlay. I use them to overlay 3-dimensional meshes with a bit of detail. For example, on the sides of a carriage, on a door, I would use a tiny little plane with the word first on it to indicate first class. Anyway, we don't need the plane. Let's work out what we're going to do here to make sure we get the right bit of texture showing on the correct bit of the mesh. So my move here is to go and leave it here, not select face, but leave it there, and then I want to edit. I'm going to edit the way in which the texture appears on the box. So here's edit. Now it's showing us the second of the two textures which make up the overall texture of Ballast, and it's map number 4 is what we want. And let's increase the size of this so we can really, so that's the texture that I'm using. It's quite a big texture, and you can see it's got ballast from there to there. It's got the top of the rail, and then it's got the sides of the rail, and they are slightly different. And then because this is for my broad gauge bulk road track, I've got a couple of sort of very low res wood style wood style textures there. And at the moment what's happening is you can see the whole of the mesh is using the whole of the texture. Now this is a really important button down here, this one here, this little triangle, and if I click on that you see it all disappears, because that tells the edit UVW's window here to only display the faces, the face or faces of the mesh which have been selected. But I'm going to unclick that, so that means all of them are selected. So I'm not worried about positioning yet. All I want to do is give an overall sort of dun coloured texture to everything. So in other words, everything which I forget to texture individually, the whole of the box is going to be coloured in that colour, in that texture, and there it is. Now that's okay, because some of these faces, the ends of the rails, maybe I'll even take that face off, and maybe the underside off as well, because they're going to join up with other rails, other iterations of this mesh. So definitely what we need is the top of the rail and then the two sides. Now to do that we need to select the face. So the first one we're going to select is the top of the rail, and we're going to go into edit, and we're going to click here, so it's only the top which has actually been selected. Then over here, this is the crucial button here, planar map. And what that does is it spreads the whole of the top of the box over the whole of the texture. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my points there and I'm going to move it over to there. This is the top of the rail that I want to have on the top of my box. Now obviously I'm doing this on a very large box. This isn't a rail, piece of rail in dimension. So let's close that. And there we are. We can see I'm doing this exceptionally large, so you can actually see the pixels of the texture actually appearing on there. Let's just have another look at the edit. Okay, there it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this 45 degrees, because I want to show you that if I do that, that's what I get. So in other words, it's now representing in those, it's spreading, smearing those few pixels from the lower part to the upper part across there. So let's move it back, and the more I move it, you see how it changes back. And let's jump it back to, there we are. And it'll do that because I've got my increment in 5 degrees button pressed down here, and remember I've got the selected, only the selected face this is dealing with. Now if I was to just leave it like that, obviously it wouldn't look very good, because the sides of the the sides of the rail are just that blank piece of colour, piece of texture. So now what I have to do is I need to select each side in turn. So first of all this side, let's have a look at edit. Now if I was just to stretch those out, then it would cause a problem, because these faces are actually interconnected with each other. And if you don't independently planar each face, then their interaction, right, there it is, then my interaction, they will interact with the other faces and affect them. So here I'm going to put this side, rotate there, that's no good, pick up the move, and it's going to go to there, and because it's the side of the rail, I'm going to put that there, and it's wrong, it's no good. And that's because even though I've planar mapped it, it needs to be in that position. So even after planar mapping it, and I thought I had it right, then it's not, it's wrong. So, but it is only the face that's working independently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that back to there, and that back to there. Does that look any better? Oh yes, that's beginning to look right. Remember, this is massively enlarged, and what I can do then is I can pick those up, and down here on vertical I can put 1, and these I can put 0. It doesn't actually make any difference because it's the same colours all the way through. But if I was doing it here, then obviously I want to pick up my pretend little bolts. Now let's go round and have a look at the other side here. Now nothing much has happened there, but if I hadn't planarred that other side, then it could well have influenced this one. So again, I'm going to pick up this side, planar map, and I know I can see there, look, it needs to be, it doesn't need to be rotated 90 degrees. So you can see there, the way these faces react is different for each one, and you just have to work your way through each face carefully to make sure that you got what you want. Sorry, no, I was talking nonsense there. That has been rotated. That needs to be rotated 90 degrees. There we are. I can just do it that way, and then bring those points over, and this one here. Okay, and that should give us, yeah, that's the similar. It's upside down. So what I need to do is, with that still selected, go into edit, and what I can do is just flip it side to side. There we are. Look. So it's got the correct gradation of colours. Remember, this is massively enlarged so as to show the pixels, the individual pixels. This is much bigger. I don't know how many feet this is. Have a look at the box. How big is it? Well, it's 9 foot tall, 19 foot long, and 4 foot wide. That's a rather large piece of rail, so we're not really into that. Okay, now let's try this, and I'm not going to planar it. Let's see what happens to the other side, see if anything happens there. And I'm just going to start mucking about. Where are we? Let's just pick up 2 of them. I can do that. Here we are. And we'll let me move them. Zoom in. There we are. Pick it up and take 2 of the side one. Now what I'm doing here is just making it ridiculous. I'm just not worrying about what the text is, just to demonstrate this. Let's make it really weird. There we are. Let's see. And you can see that's completely wrong. And it's affected this end as well. In other words, if you don't individually planar map each face, then you will influence other faces. They're usually the ones opposite, though it sometimes happens that it's others as well. When I've been doing oil tank wagons, I've hit on this quite a few times, this problem. So we've still got this selected. We're not going to worry about what's happened to the other one. So we've got that selected, so let's go to edit and let's planar it. There we are. Planar means it stretches it out to the full size of the texture. Now this one we just want to restore the sort of mud colour which I was using as a sort of faces which may get deleted, faces which aren't going to be seen in the model. Let's go there. and we can see that it's been restored to our mud colour, but round the end here, see the other end is still affected. So here we go. We're gonna, let's have a look at it. There it is again. You see it's actually following the same position that we did when we mucked about with the other side. Planar it, reduce it right down, and put the mud colour. There we are. Okay, so that should solve any problems you might have dealing with the unwrapped UVWs. And if I was to just want to change this, so if I wanted to, let's scale it down to, here we are, I'm just down in the bottom right here. Let's scale it down. I only need to alter the X because I've linked them all together there. Let's delete that. 10%. There we are. Let's zoom in. It's beginning to look a bit more like a piece of rail, but even then it's still too big. So if I position it, give it all the zeros. There we are. And it was 10%. Let's take it down to 5%. Okay, then you can see that, and this is a good tip actually, if you've got a texture you need to texture a small mesh like this, then just for the sake of clarity, it's often worthwhile starting with a big version of the mesh, and then when you've done it is to reduce it down to the correct size. It's 5% of its original size, but of course you don't want to leave it like that for when you export into Trainz. So what you need to do is reset the Xform, which is basically resetting how Gmax sees its orientation, and you can see its orientation through when you see these. So you can center to the object, and you need to align it to the world to make sure the world of Gmax. And here, if we reset the Xform, it means it's the way in which Gmax views it. So watch down here as I click reset selected, and it suddenly jumps to 100. In other words, it's no longer regarded as a reduced mesh, but that is now its complete size. I'm not sure if I can go back with that. No. Once that's a sort of like you're committed once you do that, because it will not reset it back to 5% of a massive mesh. You would need to enlarge this again. If we enlarge it to 1000%, make it 10 times bigger than it is. There we are, look, and I press return. There it is back again. Now we can change that back, but we need to make sure that it's correct. When you click on Xform, it highlights the whole of the mesh because that's what you've worked on there, and what I tend to do is I like to reduce that to collapse all those commands down to a poly. But of course that means it now loses its box option there, so you can't really type in more details about the box. But I hope that's been of use and of interest. I'll give you a quick demonstration of how I would do a wheel. For example, if I was thinking of doing a wheel, then a solid wheel, say for a piece of rolling stock, and so this is going to be massive, and I'm going to actually use the Ballast texture, which is daft, but just to show, I don't need, if I go into wireframe, you'll see there's a whole stack of segments there. I don't need those, so I can just lose those, take it down to 1. Saves a lot of polys. I like to give wheels as many sides as I can reasonably get away with, because at large size, I mean, it looks silly just having only a few faces, because it's all straight lines. It's a straight line there, straight line there, straight line, straight, giving the appearance of a circle. The circle is made up of straight lines. Okay, so let's put the Ballast colouring on there. Wow, bizarre. let's go into unwrap, and before I worry about faces or anything, and there's a lot of faces there now, because remember if you look in our cylinder, there's 24 sides all around there, and you have to do them all. What I tend to do is I tend to choose the part of the texture which I need for the sides, because there's 24 of them, and I don't want to laboriously go round selecting, go back to unwrap, selecting each face one after the other and doing it all separately. So what I tend to do is I would know which texture, part of the texture I want to put those faces in. So let's go to edit, make sure we get the right texture, not the transparency, and let's shoot that down. And I'm just picking up everything that's there. I've not Xformed it. I've not Xform. I've not planar mapped it or anything. Let's take it right down, because I want all the, let's say I want all the edges to be wooden. That's daft, but let's have all the edges wooden. So let's stick that over there and have a look at it. And there they are. They're all wooden. Looks bizarre. Completely bizarre. In fact, it doesn't even look right, because it's actually smearing it. You can just about make it out there. It's smearing it from a center there, or from a origination point there, and then down the side, and I'm sure the bottom's the same. Yeah, look at that. Dreadful. So a quick way to texture all of those around there without having to go around and select them all is to go into wireframe and then select the face. Make sure you haven't already got one selected. Select that one, and then holding down the control button, select that one, and then go up to which one is it? I can't remember now. Is it edit? Yeah, under edit, select invert. So now I've just got those sides selected. Let's edit where our mesh is. And now I'm going to planar map it. Whoa! And what that's doing is it is stacking all of the sides, all of those edges around. Let's have a look with the. There we are. You can see it's stacking it all around across the texture. Let's only see the ones we've selected. But also there's a problem here, because they're narrow there and they're wider and wider there. Usually you can't get away with this. I'm just doing this to demonstrate how I do, but normally I would go in and adjust each one. But there we are. That gives us a rough and ready wooden bit around the wheel. It's not right, but you know, it shows what I was doing there. And then if I click off those faces and I click on that one and I go into edit again, there it is. It's just that one that we're showing, and I planar map it. There it is. Let's shrink it down into the ballast. So there we have a rather bizarre looking sort of wheel, and because I planar mapped it, the bottom is still the wood. So let's do that one. Go into edit, and it's still over here. Let's planar map it, and just to show that you can do it with a different texture if you want to, bit of the texture. Let's take it over to the rail. You can see it's changed straight away. And let's rotate it about 90 degrees. Oh, no, it's just running round. There we are. But you can see there how you can muck about with it. So I hope that's a bit of help. Texturing, making the meshes is all very well, but texturing is really what brings them to life. Usually my models look like some sort of multicoloured sweet or something in a very bizarre bubblegum colours. And I like to use bright colours for the original meshes. So for example, making a box, that's okay. If I make another one, it chooses these sort of colours, but often I would go in and really distinguish them just for my own benefit when I'm making complicated meshes, collections of meshes, so I can really see which is doing what. So there we are. Well, I hope that's been of help. If you have any questions or queries about doing this basic texturing, please don't hesitate to put a question in YouTube or to email me or whatever. I'm more than happy to help, because I think making your own models is very satisfying, and once you've accomplished these sort of basic techniques, then you really can fly away with it. You stop even thinking about how you should be doing it. You just zoom around with the mouse and everything magically comes to life, and you're able to get some of your nice models into Trainz, which is the whole purpose of this exercise anyway. So there we are. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been of use. Please do subscribe to my channel, ING for Trainz. It helps the channel, it helps me, encourages me to do more of these, and it's of no cost to yourself. There's no commitment. There's no, I don't see the names or anything of people who've subscribed, and I don't harass you with anything. So there we are, and look out for my next Gmax tutorial. Peace.